Candidates, good afternoon. I'm Mr. Thabani Mhlongo. I'm here to push you and give you a revision as well as training over today's lesson for economics. Remember, tomorrow is a big day. You candidates will be writing economics paper 1. We have been waiting for a long period of time for this day to arrive. So we are here today to try and push you and see how far we can go so that we will be ready for the examination tomorrow. Just to brief you, be aware this is a preparatory examination. It will never come easy. It will never come cheap. You must be prepared. Meaning whatever that we are going to do here, we need to multiply it more than 3 times so that you will be ready for the examination. Also, be aware that whatever we're doing here doesn't guarantee that this question that we'll be working on here will appear in your examination paper tomorrow. However, whatever we're doing, we are dealing with the content for economics paper 1. So I'll be touching in everything that is in macroeconomics and economic pursuit that also needs your attention. So please join me. Let's see what you have in the pocket for you. The following are the lesson objectives. So mainly, this lesson aims at exposing the structure of economics paper 1 to you as candidates, providing an emphasis on topics distribution per question paper across all 3 sections, meaning section A to section C. Also, it provides a training to you on how you can attempt different questions in the question paper as we are writing tomorrow. I believe we are familiar with this. As for the examination guidelines, we are dealing with the paper 1, so the main focus here will be on this side, which is our paper 1. So each topic will be discussed in detail so that you will go to the question paper tomorrow being well prepared and being well aware of, on what to expect in which section. We have macroeconomics topics. In there, we have circular flow that will be explained thoroughly, business cycles, public sector, as well as the foreign exchange market. This is our paper 1, and our paper is 150 marks. So you will be writing for 2 hours. And then the other section here, or the other part, is economic pursuit. In this section, we have the protection and free trade, economic growth and development, industrial development policies, as well as social and economic indicators. So the top part there, which is macroeconomics, will be found in section A, section B, and section C. In section B, we'll come across these topics in our question 2, and also they will be a part of question 4. Remember, question 4 combines both macroeconomics and economic pursuits. And then the second part there, which is economic pursuits, will be found in question 1 as usual as a mixture with the macro. And then question 3, only economic pursuit will be in your question 3. And then also question 4, you find the economic pursuit mixed with macroeconomics. And then we will also come across question 6 in your section C as an essay. So the following are the details on the question paper. So remember, our paper for tomorrow is 150 marks. And then duration is 2 hours, like I've said before. Your paper will be having 6 questions. But then remember that you have to answer only 4 questions out of 6. You have your section A, which is compulsory for you to answer. Section B, there are 3 questions. Question number 2, 3, and 4, but you only choose 2 questions to answer. And then section C consists of 2 questions. In there, we have question 5 and question 6, but you only answer 1 question between the 2. So the following indicate the section A layout in your examination. So we have question 1. 1.1 consists of multiple choice, which is 8 marks. Remember, each question statement consists of 2 marks. So it will be 8 multiplied by 2 because we are given 8 question statements. Then that gives you 16 marks. It is a very easy option for you to get. The thing is, you must not just guess. You have to analyze your question statements and match them to the given options. Then you get the correct answer. And then we have 1.2, which is matching column A and column B matching items. This one, you are provided only column A about 8, and then column B, there will be 9. Then you need to connect or link column A and column B to get the correct answer. And then 1.3, we provide the term or the concept in there will be a definition. You provide the correct concept for that definition that is given to you. Each statement worth how many? Worth 1 mark. So there are 6 statements given to you, and then you will be getting your 6 marks, which will be giving you your 30 marks in your section A. And then this is a distribution of topics per section. We have question 1 that consists of both macroeconomics and economic pursuits. We have question 2, which consists of circular flow, business cycles, public sector, as well as the foreign exchange market. And then we have our question 3, which is economic pursuits, where we come across protectionism and free trade, economic growth and development policies, regional development, as well as economic and social indicators. And then our question 4 is the combination, like I've said, of both the macroeconomics topics as well as economic pursuits questions. So we have 20 marks for both in this combination. That is your question 4. And then here we talk about essays. How are they distributed across the question paper? So for macroeconomic essays, these are the essays that you need to consider. If you are sure you want to do question 5, you must do the following essays: the markets for the circular flow, and then also the new economic paradigm or smoothing the business cycle, features underpinning focusing, public sector objectives, reasons for public sector failure, demand, reasons for foreign trade, as well as the supply, reasons for foreign trade. If you can master all of these topics or essays, you will be ready for question number 5. And then question number 6, we have the following essays: export promotion, arguments in favor of protectionism, demand side approach to economic growth and development, economic growth and development policies, South African handovers to regional development, economic indicators, social indicators. If you master this side also of question 6 or economic pursuit, you will be ready for question 6. So it's up to you on which essay you want to answer. It is very important for you to ensure that you follow your strength. I mean, if you know that you are very strong in macroeconomics essays, ensure that you iron them out, so that in case the question or the essay that you are well prepared of doesn't appear in the examination question paper, you will also be okay to answer on the other side, which is economic pursuit. Just prepare yourself, balance your content across sections. Avoid answering or writing the question that did not appear in the question paper. You render yourself to get 0 out of 40. So it is very important. We have seen that happening, whereby you are given a question in section C, then you choose to answer your own that is not provided. You even provide your own additional part. That is very dangerous. Ensure that to answer questions that have been questions that appear in the question paper. Don't bring your own questions, because that endangers you as you want to succeed in economics. So in this section now, I'm going through the distribution of subtopics per main topic or per chapter. We have the circular flow here. So under circular flow, you must consider the following for tomorrow: money flow and real flow. So in this case, it can be from lower order, middle order, the most. So you can look at the minimum of 1 mark to the maximum of 8 marks, especially if ever the examiner asks you to distinguish between the two or give the difference between money flow and the real flow. And then we also have leakages and injections. It is very important that you know the definitions. You can give the difference between the two. You can also provide the list of leakages, list of injections, and also the formula for injections and formula for leakages. And then open and closed economy. It is very important also that you start from the lower order and go up in this section, because you can even get the maximum of 8 marks in this case. Examiner can ask you maybe to list or provide, or maybe give the difference or briefly discuss. So it is very important for you to be ready from all level of your achievement, from lower order to the higher order. The role and importance of participants in the economy. So in this part, you can be questioned from lower order also to the higher order. For instance, you identify or you mention participants in the closed open economy, or maybe you discuss the importance of a certain participant in the economy. For instance, briefly discuss the importance of households, briefly discuss the importance of businesses or the foreign sector. So it is very important for you to be well informed. Also, it can be converted to the higher order, whereby the examiner can ask you the question that is critical, or where you evaluate contribution that is made by maybe household to build the South African economy, or that is made by businesses or the government to build South African economy. It is very important that you align your mind to move with these topics from lower order to the higher order. Interaction between participants. You normally ignore this because you covered this in grade 10, so you have been ignoring it. But then this is prelim, you can expect something that might not be expected. So you must be prepared for such. Know the interaction between participants so that you can score those marks if they come in. Also, the markets. The importance of market, or discussing detailed importance of market in the circular flow. It is very important for you to know this essay. I normally call it a star effect because I believe everybody can answer in this. However, the issue comes when you are asked about this essay, you simply answer on the participants. Be very careful, be precise. You know that easy questions always create a problem because you answer them with excitement and forget to be very much careful and intensive as you answer those questions. National account, in this case, we talk about system of national account aggregates, where we talk about income method, production method, as well as expenditure method. And then these normally come as the what we call the data response, but then they can also come in 8 marks questions also. And then we talk about the real and nominal GDP. It is very important for you to be able to give the difference between real GDP and nominal GDP. That is very important because normally you can be asked for how many marks? For 8 marks in the maximum of this if it's the middle order question. Also, you have to know why does the government choose to use real GDP to measure the level of economic growth. So it is very important for you to keep that in your mind, be able to distinguish and have enough content on the matter. The multiplier. It is very important also that you do all aspects of the multiplier, from the definition to the multiplier effect to calculations to the multiplier diagram. We continue. The business cycle is the longest one also. So you must be able to define the business cycle. At the same time, it is very important to be able to draw the business cycle, both the typical business cycle and also the actual business cycle. So in this case, we have types of business cycles that are very important for you to know, especially for the duration that each business cycle type take to be complete. And also, it is important for you to be able to give the definition as for the nature of investment or component that each type of business cycle is used for. And then we continue. Remember, we have actual business cycle and typical business cycle. And then we go to the types of business cycles, 7 of them: Jackler, contractive, Kuznets. And then we have demand-sided, supply-sided, political, etc. And then also it is important for you to know the reasons for the business cycles: the monetary approach, as well as Keynesian approach, endogenous and exogenous. You must know, especially it can be from lower order to higher order in case you come across that question for 8 marks or as a part of additional part. So it is very important for you to note and be able to answer from 1 mark to 10 marks. Business cycle diagram, like I mentioned, you must be able to draw it, indicating the length, indicating the amplitude. It is very important. We have seen in previous question papers where we have been asked to show the length. People have been struggling to do that. To show the amplitude, people have been struggling to do that. Also, the phases of the business cycle, you must be able to discuss them, especially when the question says distinguish or differentiate between recession and depression. We find you struggling to answer that kind of the question, but that's a grade 10 content that was covered back then. So it is very important that you bring enough content for those so that you can be able to answer if ever you come across the question, to define or distinguish between each, or to briefly discuss for especially maybe 8 marks. And then smoothing the business cycle. In this case, we talk about the critical part that you normally struggle on, where you smooth the business cycle from maybe the peak or from the trough, or when the economy is overheating at economic boom, or when the economy is cold or underperforming at economic slump. It is very important for you to be able to use both fiscal policy and monetary policy instrument to smoothen the business cycle. And then we continue the new economic paradigm. In this case, we talk about both demand side and supply side. So it is important for you to know this is an essay, but it can be split into two, having both demand side and also supply side as independent essays. So you must be prepared for such, because it's a section C that I believe it always gives you a certain motive if ever the essay you have done appears in the question paper. And then we continue features, underpinning, forecasting. This is also an essay where you deal with economic indicators. You deal with indicators, and then you deal with other features, underpinning, forecasting. So it is very important that you don't undermine this, because when it comes into the examination, we find you struggling. Also, it is important for you to note, let's say the question comes in under indicators as a section C, and then it says, discussing detailed features, all features underpinning forecasting, excluding indicators. But the first answer will be indicators. It is very important for you to read the question with understanding before you attempt to answer. And then the public sector. As for grade 10 content, even grade 12, spheres or levels of the public sector are very important for you. Importance and necessity of the public sector is also important. And then budgets, all three types of budgets, namely main budget, MTF and MTPPS, they are also important for you to be able to explain them, link them, and give the difference between each of them. And then also the fiscal policy. In this case, know the fiscal policy, and then know the instruments, know the functions of fiscal policy, and also know the Lafayette curve in there, the tax bracket and bracket creeping. It is very important also for you to know, you must know characteristics or features of the fiscal policy. And then Lafayette curve have been mentioned. And then public sector provisioning. Reasons for poor public sector provisioning are very important. You must know them. They can start from lower order to the higher order. You can be asked to evaluate, and then you can ask to briefly discuss. You can be asked to identify or define. So it is very important for you to know them all, these reasons for poor public sector provisioning. And then we go to an essay, reasons for public sector failure also must be known. Remember, they are linked to reasons for poor public sector provisioning. And then you must also know objectives of the public sector. And then this is the longest one, also the foreign trade. In this case, we deal with, we have public sector failures in there. And then number one, under foreign trade, we deal with what we call demand side and supply side. Reasons for the international trade. It is very important for you to know that, because it's an essay. That's a part of your section C, question 5. And then know both of them, know the structure, or remember the structure that is provided in your mind, the gaps for you to remember subheadings. And then effects of the international trade, you must also know the effects. And then also absolute and competitive advantage. In examination for June, we had a problem whereby the question was asked on absolute advantage, and then you were struggling to provide the difference between the two for additional parts. So you must make sure that you get that correction and you'll be ready for tomorrow. Balance of payment account. Remember, it is a very important section. Also, you must be informed about BOP from the beginning to the end. Remembering all all sub accounts of the BOP, and then types of exchange rate systems. You must know them all. 3 of them must be known, and you must be able to discuss them so that you will be able to get that 8 marks in case it comes in for that monthly order, and then you are able also to get lower order where you have to identify or define them for monthly order. And then reasons for demand of the foreign exchange rate. You must know also, why should we demand the foreign currency or the foreign exchange rate, or why do they demand our currency? Remember, that thing is found in your textbook and your notes. You must remember that, so that if ever it comes in, you nail it. And then South African Reserve Bank intervention to stabilize a weak or strong currency. It is very important for you to know the intervention, which is known as indirect intervention by the Reserve Bank to stabilize the currency. It can be an overvalued currency or undervalued currency. You need to know how can the Reserve Bank intervene using its interest rates to stabilize the currency. Appreciation graph, you must know also the appreciation graph. You must be able to draw the graph, interpret the graph, and also answer questions that are possible in there. Remember, appreciation is caused by excess supply, while depreciation is caused by excess demand for the local currency. Devaluation and revaluation, this is a direct intervention and deliberate intervention by the Reserve Bank. So it is very important for you also to be able to distinguish between the two, devaluation and revaluation, appreciation and depreciation. You must be able to give the difference. In terms of trade, trade. You must be able to describe terms of trade, also know their effect, know what causes terms of trade to increase or decrease. Also, you must know the effect of what you call of the appreciation to terms of trade and depreciation to the terms of trade. You must be able to calculate terms of trade also given the formula. And then also the last one is correcting the balance of payment disequilibrium. It is very important for you to be able to correct BOP disequilibrium using those given 7 measures according to your content. And then this is economic pursuits, economic growth and development. In this case, you must be able to give the difference between economic growth and development for the minimum of 4 to 8 marks. And then demand side policies to economic growth and development. It is very important for you to be able to write this essay. Remember, this essay doesn't come as a new essay. It's more of a duplicate from your demand side on the smoothing of the business cycle. You bring it in, then you continue with other measures. And then supply side policies, you must know it. Remember, it's also a duplicate from what you call the new economic paradigm supply side policies. North-South divide. You must be well informed of this matter, whereby we talk about this the world stratification or division between developed and developing countries. Also, you must know globalization challenges, namely the growth, the trade, as well as poverty. It is very important for you to know why are developing countries struggling in terms of these challenges. And then economic growth and development policies since 1994. It is very important for you to know this can come in section A, section B, or section C. It's also an essay, so be aware and be informed. You can come across this where you talk about RDP, GIA, ASGISA, GIPSA, NDP, NGP, EPWP, triple BE or BE. They are very important for you, so you must be informed of their objectives. You must be informed of the evaluation. Have they been successful or not successful in South Africa since they were initiated? It is very important for you to keep that in your mind, because we don't know how will the question paper appear. So if ever the content is in, you must simply knock it down. And then regional development. So this one is also very important. It is very important for you to remember regional development policies. You must also remember approaches to to industrial development. And then objective of regional development must also be remembered. South African handovers to industrial development. It's an essay where we talk about ITZ, SDI, SEZ, and corridors. This is a common essay and familiar essay, and I know you have done it and you are enjoying it. It is a very simple essay for you to do. You must know the best practice of regional benchmark. 9 of them must be known by you. In case they come in the examination, we are able to answer from lower order up to the higher order. Incentive to promote industrial development. They are also important for you. Those 8 incentives under industrial development. And then indicators. Remember, we have economic indicators that are pro-cyclic and counter-cyclic. You must know the difference between the two, and also know be able to identify or to mention pro-cyclic economic indicators between them all and counter-cyclic economic indicators. And then also economic indicators as an essay, you must know that it is very important because the essay might come in, nobody knows, so be prepared. Also social indicators essay, these are also simple essays for you, so if ever you come across them, it will give you more, the greater motive for you to attempt the question paper. So the contribution as for percentage for each section. So our section A contribute about 20% in our in our question paper, and then section B contribute about 53.3%, while section C contribute about 26.7%. So it is very important for you to know this, so that if you prepare, you know your strength, you know where you are strong, then you will be able to go through the question paper. So the following gives you the way to go through the multiple choice. It is very important for you to read each statement with understanding before you attempt to answer. As you read 1.1, it is very important for you that as you read to understand the question statement and try to derive the answer from your mind. Then you can look for that option if it's available in there. Choose the correct answer. Avoid going into the examination with ready-made answers, because you will be getting 0 out of 16 in this case, and you will be starting to fail. Avoid leaving spaces with the hope that you will return in the near future. Do not leave spaces. Just simply answer the question as you go. Avoid leaving spaces because you will be forfeiting marks. Also, avoid writing an answer on top of another answer. Let's say you thought initially the answer was B. Then after that you think the answer is A. You write A on top of B. That will be wrong. No marker will be marking that because it won't be clear. And also avoid giving 2 answers in this section. If we are given these 4 options, choose one option. If you give 2 options, then one is wrong. Scratch it. If you did not scratch, then it will be difficult for the marker. The marker does not have to choose. The marker have to mark the given answer, which is one answer only for you. And then also like I said, do not give, two or more answers. Give only one answer in there. And then we continue. Write only a letter next to the question number. Do not write the statement again. Write the letter, and then do not guess an answer. Read each question with understanding. And then remember, you are given from A up to D. So we don't expect to see E in 1.1 in that case, because we don't have E up to infinity. It ends at D. So it is very important for you to avoid bringing unknown answers and letters in the examination. Eliminate correct options. Ensure that you work around and deal with what you know, and then after that you can see what is pending. And then this part of section A creates 16 marks for you. So the following are the examples. 1.1.1. So remember, we are given options here. You choose the correct letter. The circular flow model of an open economy shows the functioning of economy that includes dash sector. So automatically you can provoke your mind to give you the answer in this part, because now it shows this bolded circular flow model of an open economy. You already know that it includes the foreign sector. Then you look for the foreign sector, you get it down there, then you get your answer correct. There you go, foreign sector is there, then your answer is correct, you get your 2 marks. And then we'll continue with some examples. The international trade agreed set a recommendation on how to compile measures of economic activity is called N. And then we have international trade protocol, the system of financial accounts, productive account, inflationary protocol. Then let's see what do we have in there as for the answer. Then system of national accounts. Remember, that's an international organization that set the benchmark on how to compile what we call national accounts. And then, so B is correct in there. We continue. Removal of unnecessary restriction by legislation is known as, so if ever the state decide to remove some regulation that are unnecessary, since they prohibit the functionality of market, which one is that? Obvious, it cannot be regulation, but it should be the regulation. Then let's look at the possible answers there that are given. Obviously, it's the regulation. Our answer is B. And then we continue. And then we have a term used to compare the country's export prices with its import prices. Obviously, we think about terms of trade in that case. Let's look at the possible answer. Terms of trade. So B is correct in there. It's TOTs. And then geographical area that has been set aside to perform specific economic activities. You go straight to industrial development in there and look which are those areas. Then you will be thinking of ITZ, SEZ, corridors, SDIs. Then let's look at the let's see which answer is correct. By the way, we know it's already special economic zones. Obviously, there is A is correct. And then we'll continue. An increase in real value of production in a country is known as economic dash, development, growth, integration, and prosperity. Obviously, we know what the answer is. Let's look what is given to us. Then economic growth is correct as an answer there. And then we continue. A strategy that failed in its objective to have poverty and unemployment by 2014. Remember that strategy. We're given strategies here: NGP, RDP, ASGISA, and NDP. So the one that failed is only ASGISA, because it was aiming to ensure that it halves unemployment to 14% by 2014. And then let's look at the answer. NGP is wrong, RDP is wrong. Then answer is C, which is ASGISA. And then we continue with the last one. A deliberate intervention by central bank to decrease the value of the country's currency is known as. So if it's deliberate, already you will be taking out appreciation and depreciation. You look at between devaluation and revaluation. So let's look at to decrease the value of the currency. So that should be an answer down there. Let's look. Our A will be wrong, our B will be wrong, and then our C will also be wrong, but it should be our devaluation. Then you get your 16 marks in that case. And then we go to the matching items. Knowing your description for a column A makes it is simple for you to match column B. It is very important if you are given column A and column B. Know those descriptions or definitions for the column A concept. Then it will be easy for you to choose the correct answer, because if you don't know the description for column A, it will be difficult for you to get the correct answer in column B. You will end up mixing those options. Use elimination method, meaning start with what you know and then exhaust it. Then you look at available options. Then you can start guessing if ever we are troubled by 1 or 2 responses. Then you look for answers already. If you have been confused, you will be looking at available options. Then you choose the correct one. After eliminating, you surely have few options, then you can choose the correct answer instead of leaving blank spaces. Remember that it is highly possible that choosing one wrong answer in this section or this part result to two wrong answers. It can even go further to 4 to 6 until you get 0. Do not leave any question unattended. Ensure that you match everything that is given in there. Write only the correct letter next to the question number. Do not copy the description that is given in column B. And then here we go. We are given options: monetary policy, we know, and then the MPC, already we have an idea. Terms of trade, export promotion, open market transaction, incentive, and then trade liberalization, and then consumer price index. So it is very important for you to be able to describe this concept, then you can choose the correct answer. Then our 1.2.1 is E, which is approach taken by the country's central bank to influence spending in the economy. And then 1.2.2 is I, which is the proportion of disposable income household can spend. And then 1.2.3 is A, which is the what we call compares export prices with the import prices, which is our terms of trade. 1.2.4 is H, which is the trade policy that promotes the manufacturing of local product for foreign markets or to be sold abroad. 1.2.5 is D. Let's look at D. Our D, we are matching what we call is buying and selling of the government securities, which is our open market transaction, by the way. And then 1.2.6 is G. Let's look at the G, strategies used to encourage production. And then 1.2.7 is C. Our C is removal of trade barriers. 1.2.8 is F, which looks at measures headline inflation. That gives you 8 marks. So this is the easy option or easy part for you to get total 8 out of 8. And then this is 1.3. It is very important for you that you know your terminology and also understand the description before you write the answer. And then you must not leave any space unattended. And also do not just comply, interact intensively with the given description or definition. Then you can provide the concept. Write answers in full. Do not choose abbreviation or acronyms. They won't be allowed. So in case the answer is RDP, RDP will be wrong if it's written as RDP. Should be written as Reconstruction and Development Program. So these are the given options where you have to provide the concept or the term on the given definition. A portion of spending that is dependent on income, obviously that is an induced. Occurs when the public official shows no interest on taking the action on arising matters. That we go straight to the public sector and look at the content, and then we go straight a statement of a country that country's trade and financial transaction with the rest of the world, and then we continue. Replacing former imports with locally produced goods and services, a tract of land that form passageways that allow access from one point to another, the use of known information to discover the unknown information. So this is protectionism and free trade under import substitution. And then we talk about, in this case, industrial development, and here we go straight to business cycles. So let's look at these answers straight in there as I've just put them into their relevant content or topics. Induced spending is number 1. The apathy is number 2. Bonds of payments. BOP is wrong. It won't be marked correct. It will be marked wrong because BOP is a part of abbreviations. And then also import substitution. And then we have corridors as well as extrapolations. These are our answers as for the given definitions. This gives you 6 marks. And then the next part explains to you how to approach the section B. So in this part, you answer only 2 questions between question 2, 3, and 4. You don't answer all questions. Remember, even the instruction tells you that you must answer in section B only 2 questions, not all 3 questions. Use 10 minutes given to make profitable choices. Choose questions that will give you more marks. You know your strength. And then also read each question with understanding before attempting to answer. Know where you can score more marks, and then start to compare as you choose the question between question 2, question 3, and question 4. Use the opportunity cost principle in there. Read data response with understanding while highlighting important information and contextualize it. It is very important that if you read data response, you take it to the certain content or certain topic in your economics, and then you link it. It will be easy for you to answer questions if you understand where does this data response belong in my economics topics. Improve your ability to link, because the question paper requires the most of linking and application. So it is very important that we are not only equipped in terms of listing, but you can be able to link. And then also Be smart when answering application questions. You need to answer accordingly. Ensure that you answer in full sentences. Do not list where you have to apply. Understand those main concepts as you read the question and then answer according to that. Avoid answering on negative and positive, then you leave it like that. You will never score a mark for such. Answer in full sentences like I mentioned before. Explain where you have to explain. Do not list, because be aware, in case you list where you have to discuss, you render yourself to get the maximum of 2 marks if ever is 8 marks. So the maximum of 1 mark if ever the answer was 2 marks. Ensure that you explain where you are supposed to explain or discuss. The lower order in this case, 2.1.1, 3.1.1, 4.1.1, that's where you are required to list or mention any 2. These are some examples. Give 2 examples of leakages. So we have 3 leakages, so we are required to give only 2. So we have given savings, taxation, and then import spending is correct. However, you have listed 3, we only need 2. Avoid wasting time answering things that are unnecessary. Answer things that will be giving you marks, not extra stuff in your examination, because if you have to list 2, you just have to list 2, not 3. And then name any 2 types of business cycles. Then we have 7 of them. Jack LaCourse net contractive, kitchen, demand driven, and then supply driven, as well as political. So we only mark 2 because you are required to provide only 2. Name 2 spheres of the public sector. We have 3 of them: national government, provincial, and local government. So it is very important for that you only provide what is required, not extra. Give any 2 types of action rate systems. We have 3 of them, we need only 2. Doesn't mean that the fixed action rate is wrong. It is correct. However, you have exhausted your mark, which is 2 marks in there. Free floating action rate, manage or control floating action rate, and then you have your last one, which is fixed. But then we don't mark the 3rd one because you only have 2 which have been provided, and you have acquired your maximum marks in there. Mention any 2 components of balance of payment account. Of financial account. We have direct investments, portfolio investment. The 3rd one is other, but because we have already exhausted your 2, then you get your 2 marks in there. Mention 2 forms of import substitution. We have only 2, so there are 2. In that case, we talk about voluntarily import substitution as well as the forced import substitution. Mention 2 types of corridors. So we have corridors within South Africa and corridors beyond the South African borders. List any 2 methods of calculating GDP. We have 3 of them, then we need only 2. Income method, expenditure, and production. But because the first 2 is correct, then we will be marked out of 2. The 3rd one won't be marked because we have maximized your marks. Mention any 2 examples of indirect taxes. Value-added tax, ad valorem tax, sin tax, import taxes. So we need only 2. So we'll be marking 2, not more than 2. It is very important for you to note. Even if you have more content on that particular question, you provide the required maximum. Mention any 2 instruments of monetary policy: repo rate or repurchase rate, cash reserve requirement or reserve requirement ratio. Then we have others as open market transaction, moral suasion or moral persuasion, or credit control. However, only 2 is needed, so it is very important for you to note that. And then mention any 2 features of fiscal policy. We have 3 of them characteristics. It is goal bound, it is demand sided, and it is also cyclical. But we only mark 2, not the 3rd one, because now you will be getting 3/2. And then the middle order question, this is where now you must be able to link, understand the question, and then link those concepts, then you can answer in a full sentence. So be able to apply the content, understand the question before attempting to answer, relate concept on the question statement, and be mindful of the action verb as you underline. Also answer in full sentences, do not list in there. And then let's check, what effect will a decrease in repo rate have on consumption spending? We know that if ever repo rate has been lowered, so decrease in repo rate has on consumption spending. If repo rate has been lowered, that will simply mean the credit will be more affordable and cheap. So that will mean people will find it easy to take loans from commercial banks, leading to increase in spending or consumption. A decrease in repo rate increase credit creation as loans become more cheap. This will increase money supply and increase consumption spending. How can the increase in infrastructure costs hamper economic growth? If ever the cost of the infrastructure increases, remember businesses are very much dependent on the infrastructure. So if the cost of the infrastructure such as energy, communication, as well as we'll talk about energy, communication, and transport, if it becomes more expensive, that will be leading to the increase in the cost of production. So let's look. High cost of infrastructure such as transport, energy, and communication increase the cost of doing the business. This decrease production, aggregate supply, GDP, and economic growth. You must be able to link. It is being emphasized. And then we continue with some examples. How do developed countries favor the idea of free trade? We know that developed countries have a lot to offer under globalization. So if ever there's a free trade, they always benefit because they can even push out our local firms out of the market because they produce at the economies of scale and also they have mass production, which lead to them selling their goods at the lowest possible cost compared to our goods locally. Therefore, they have a lot to offer. They benefit the most. Free trade increases competition and this encourages innovation, especially in developed countries that have the know-how. So they know how to produce, they have relevant machinery and equipment. Developed countries have free access to resources worldwide needed for mass production and expanded markets. Developed countries benefit from trade agreement with poor countries, so they always favor them. Free trade reduces regulations on the production of labor, environment, and consumers. Free trade increases the power of multinational industries. How does the South African Reserve Bank use open market transaction to restrict the credit? So how can SARB use open market transaction, meaning we're talking about the bonds here to restrict credit? Obviously, Reserve Bank will have to do what? Will have to sell bonds to commercial banks so that it will be taking money away from the circulation. That will lead to less money available and less demand for goods and services. The South African Reserve Bank sell financial securities, bonds, or paper asset to restrict money supply or money flow. The banks are forced to buy these security documents, which leave the banks with less money to lend, which is known as quantitative tightening. This makes it difficult for banks to have more money supply available. Then there will be less loans given to their clients. How are developing countries negatively affected by capitalism? So capitalism leads to inequality as it based on the profit motive and the accumulation of wealth. So if we talk of capitalism, remember, we talk about the market. So the market is profit motive. Everything it does is to ensure that it maximizes profit. So in this case, those that are at the part of higher class, or let's say the middle class or capital class, they always benefit at the expense of the lower class. The developed countries with competitive advantage exploit the cheap labor and resources of the developing countries and accumulate their wealth, which then widens income gap. We know that as developing countries, we are troubled by the fact that we don't have enough machinery and equipment. In that case, we depend on importing goods from foreign countries. And then as we export our raw materials, we export them with less value because they have a strategic value. They have not been transformed to finished goods. So we sell them to them, and then those goods are sold back to us as finished goods, and then at the higher cost, meaning we are being manipulated as developing countries. Developing countries over-extract their natural resources to improve their international trade activities, which enriches developed countries as they have all resources necessary to transform natural resources to value-added goods. And then we continue with the middle order questions. How can the South African Reserve Bank use the repurchase rate to stimulate underperforming economy? Now we are smoothing the business cycles in there. So we know that if ever the economy is underperforming, the economy is down there, maybe a trough, or the economy is cold, or is facing economic slump, then the Reserve Bank must intervene by doing what? By lowering or decreasing repurchase rates so that there will be more credit creation. It should act in a way that attracts clients to take loans from commercial banks. So if loans become relatively cheap, clients will be taking loans from commercial banks and demand more goods and services, which will be leading to the economy recovering because there will be an increase in spending in the economy. And then we continue. What impact does high savings has on the size of the multiplier? We know that savings are the part of leakages. If ever savings are increasing, that will lead to the fact that the consumption decreases. So if savings are higher, consumption will be lower. Then the size of the multiplier will also be lower. Why are assets subtracted in the balance of payments? Remember, as we go to the BOP, we have assets and liabilities. Then where do we get these assets? I will talk about financial account, for instance. Under financial account, any inflow of the investment into the country, let's say the direct investment, foreign investor investing by buying the property in South Africa, starting the business in South Africa, or also maybe buying the existing business in South Africa. In that case, there's a money flow, the inflow of the foreign currency. So that money will be recorded in the BOP and be added as a liability. And then if South African investor is investing abroad, by buying the company under direct investment, or establishing the company, or by investing in the real estate abroad. That amount of money will be subtracted from South African economy because it's an outflow of domestic currency, and then it will then be named as an asset. So the question is, why are these assets subtracted? They are subtracted because they reflect the outflow of money from the economy. Why do we call them asset? We call them asset because this money, as it's being invested abroad, the future benefits of this investment will be will be gained back in South Africa. So asset is accumulative. So this investment will accumulate even further, and then benefits will be enjoyed back in South Africa. Hence, we call them asset, and they will be subtracted due to the fact that the money is flowing out of our domestic economy. Then we continue. How can South African Reserve Bank use interest rate to correct balance of payment deficit? So let's say we have a BOP deficit. So that simply means we are faced by a situation of there is more outflow of domestic currency than the inflow of the foreign currency. So how can Reserve Bank intervene? So if ever we are faced by a deficit, Reserve Bank must intervene by increasing the interest rate. By doing that, if interest rates have been increased, that will lead to domestic people or domestic consumers being hampered from taking loans from commercial banks, meaning the consumption spending or the demand for goods and services will be decreasing, including local demand and the demand for imported goods and services, which will lead to what? It will lead to less imports flowing into the country, and that will be favoring our what you call our trade balance under the balance of payments. As it being mentioned, South African Reserve Bank increased interest rate to lower credit creation and the money supply, resulting to decrease in income and decrease in demand for imported goods and services. Why is it necessary for the country to analyze the balance of payments? It is very important for each country to analyze BOP so that it can be able to discover the value of inflows and the outflows. Also, it is very important for the country to analyze BOP so that it can be able to discover its competitiveness in the international or foreign market. Without analyzing, they won't be able to discover if they are competitive or they are less competitive in the foreign market. It also helps the government to intervene when necessary by borrowing money or taking loans from international organizations to finance its BOP if it's faced by the deficit. And then we continue. Why is it necessary for South Africa to be involved in foreign trade agreements? It is very important for the country to be involved in foreign trade agreements so that, remember, we are faced by the scarcity of resources. So if ever we are involved in the foreign trade agreement, that allows us to have a mutual benefit with those countries that we are involved with. For instance, South Africa is a part of BRICS, so it is benefiting from being the member. Also, members of BRICS are also benefiting from South Africa. So having to be a part of the, the trade agreement, the foreign trade agreement, develop the international relations and also allow the country to be able maybe to export most of the volume of its goods and services to the foreign countries duty free. So it is very important for the country also to be involved so that its goods can get acknowledgement and exposure in the foreign market. Modern economy requires more involvement in global economies because resources are unevenly distributed. So because of the scarcity of resources, whatever that we cannot afford to produce, foreign countries can be able to supply us with those goods. So it is very important for us to be involved so that we can reduce the scarcity of resources internationally. The involvement in the foreign agreement enables South Africa to access foreign markets, which improve local output. Remember that foreign markets are bigger than local markets. So if we are involved in foreign markets, our goods can be well known in the foreign market, and also they can be able to compete globally. So that will lead to them getting to be even more exposed. South African exporters benefit through duty-free import and export as they are involved in trade agreements with other world countries. What impact does regional development have on social welfare? So we know that if ever there are regional development policies in place, there will be improvement of standard of living because there will be jobs being created in those regions. There will be more income earned by people, leading to them affording basic needs and goods and services. Industries will be installed in the area. There will be investment within those regions, allowing people to get jobs. So there will be improvement of living standards because of regional development. So that will allow people of the region to participate openly in the economic mainstream because they have economic resource, which is money or income. And then we continue. How can the increase in taxation negatively affect the economy? We know that if ever taxation has been increased, so let's talk about different kinds of taxes. If ever the direct tax have been increased, let's say the income tax or personal income tax, let's say, if personal income tax increases, that will lead to the household having less disposable income, then they afford less goods and services, leading to declining demand and declining productivity by firms, and also decrease in economic growth or GDP. And then also, if ever value-added tax have declined, that will all, has increased, that will lead to what? It will increase the selling price for goods and services, resulting to consumers demanding less goods. As they demand less goods and services in the economy, that will always affect businesses negatively. And then if the company tax or corporate tax has increased, that will be increasing the cost of doing the businesses, resulting to the business being discouraged to invest in South African economy, because most of that revenue goes straight to the government. So it will be pushing away investors. So these are some answers that I've mentioned already. So this is the data response section. It is very important that you are able to analyze the data response. It can be cartoons, extract, data, tables, graphs, and images. You must be able to analyze them before you attempt to answer questions. The problem with you is this. You simply go to questions without analyzing the data response given to you. It is very important for you to analyze data response properly, and then you contextualize it, you underline or highlight important information before you attempt to answer questions, because you end up going to attempt answering without understanding the data response, then you will be copying the data response. Remember, this is the case in this case of data response. You have maybe question 2, let's say question 2, 2.2.1, 2.2.2. Those are only answers that can be found. Even in that case, it's not guaranteed that answers can be found in the data response. They can be easy but not be found in there. Then from there going down, you need to answer as for contextualizing the data response to the particular topic. So it is very important for you to analyze and avoid copying data response, because in that case, it can only be an answer in 2 options. The first 2 answers for lower order. It is also not guaranteed that the answer will be there, but it might be the lower order. I'm repeating myself. You must be able to interpret information on any data response given, and then do not copy extract when unnecessary. Only 1 mark answer can be found on the given data. And then note that 2.2.3, 2.3.3, this requires a content knowledge up to 4.3.3. You can't just get the answer from the data response. And then also 2.2.4, you need to link 2.2.4 and then 2.3.4. Also question 3, question 4, you must link and apply. There is no way you will be told to mention or list. So it is important also for you to know the structure of each data response questions. You know that you have a lower order, 1 mark, the definition 2 marks, linking 2 marks, also linking 4 marks. Then it is very important for you to be aware of that. You must know your question paper before you go and see the question paper actually, because it gives you the way to go. It gives you the confidence. So this is the example of data response. In this case, you are given what you call the circular flow diagram in there. We have markets in the circular flow, which include product market and the factor market. And then you have 2 participants, businesses and households. It's still on the data response. We have the money flow and the real flow. The flow of goods and services. Flow of goods and services. That's what we call the real flow. Flow of factor production is also a real flow. So, and then inside there we have revenues flowing and then expenditure. So this gives you the money flow. So this indicates what we call the closed economy, because there is no foreign sector. Let's look at possible questions. What is depicted by the diagram above? Circular flow model, and then 2-sector model circular flow or closed economy. Identify 1 example of real flow, and then there you go, factors of production or goods and services. So both answers are there. And then, but the first one is not there. You need just to bring the answer because it's a lower order, but this one is in the data response. So you must be very mindful of such. And then the definition. Briefly describe the term product market. So it is being defined the market where final goods and services are traded or sold or bought. And then we continue with our data response in circular flow. what could the Minister of Finance do to promote economic activities in South Africa? Creating more confidence in macroeconomic policies between all role players or all participants in the economy, and also developing an investor-friendly legislation, meaning whatever legislation must be able to attract investors to invest in South Africa, availing opportunities for all with the capabilities to participate, such as SMMEs, small, micro, and medium enterprises. Overseeing South African economy operating in a global economy rather than the closed economy. So it must ensure that it promotes local firms to participate globally, not only local, so that there can be a growth of the economy. Making laws and legislation that permits participation. And then conducting research on what needs to be done to promote what we call our local firm to the global market. And then how can the foreign direct investment, FDIs, influence the national income? Remember, FDIs are those businesses that decide to invest in South African economy. For instance, the foreign investor invests by maybe starting the business in South Africa or buying the existing business in South Africa. Those are foreign direct investments. And then an increase in FDIs will influence national income positively by, and then investing more and injection into the circular flow, which will increase the production. Increasing employment opportunity that will result to greater demand for goods and services. Increasing aggregate demand or multiplier effect. We know that if there are more FDIs, there will always be job creation and job opportunities, leading to more income and more demand for goods and services in the economy. Then we are giving the data response on the circular flow. In this case, we are giving the positive output gap. We know that in this section of peak or prosperity, we have what we call inflation, because there's more money chasing few goods in the economy, and also as there is more money chasing few goods in the economy, our local consumers are troubled because they demand more goods, only to find that our local firms are faced by supply constraints. Therefore, they will be importing more goods from the foreign market, leading to the BOP problems, because as imports are increasing faster than exports, that will be leading to the deficit in terms of the trade balance. So in this section, or the situation of the peak or prosperity, we are faced by a situation of what? Of high inflation, high level of imports, more money chasing few goods, and high demand for imported goods and services. And then we have the recession, and then down there's depression. Then there's a trough there indicating that economy is underperforming. That means economy is cold, or we are faced by economic slump. And then we go to the recovery, and then economic boom or prosperity. And then we have potential output, and then actual output as for real GDP, and then long-term trend line. Remember, on the vertical, we are faced by real GDP or index of economic activities, and then on the horizontal, we are faced by time or period. It is very important for you to be able to identify what you call the length of the business cycle. Also, you must be able to identify the amplitude of the business cycle. It's very important for you also to explain or to give the difference between recession and depression for at least 8 marks. So you need to know your content in this case, and also know how can the state intervene by using fiscal policy to smoothen the economy if it's facing either peak or it's facing economic slump or trough. It is also important for you to know how can the state intervene, or the Reserve Bank intervene by using monetary policy instrument to smooth the business cycle if it's facing peak or trough. So that's a key information for you. And then identify a point that indicates economic slump, that is trough. So this is only 1 mark. How is the amplitude of the business cycle measured? So amplitude is measured from what we call, it can be expansion or contraction, moving from what we call the peak trend line, trough trend line to peak. Briefly describe the term recession. Recession is a successive or consecutive increase, a consecutive decrease in or decline in economic activities that can last for 2 consecutive quarters or for 6 months. And then we'll continue with the data response. How can fiscal policy be used to dampen overheated economy? Now, it is very important for you to avoid mixing fiscal policy and monetary policy. If we talk of the fiscal policy, we refer to what we call the government spending, taxation, and also government debts or borrowing. So it is very important for you to know that. Contractionary fiscal policy can be applied where government spending is reduced and tax is being increased to decrease, to dampen an overheated economy. What negative impact does the continuous increase in repo rate has in South African economy? We have seen that repo rate has been increasing continuously. That is leading to the fact that those people that are owing commercial banks or some other institutions keep on facing a situation of having to pay more returns or to pay more money as they pay back their loans from commercial banks, and that lead to the decrease in money supply and decrease in spending that affect the economy negatively if the spending is declining, because that will lead to firms producing less and people might find themselves being unemployed because there will be less demand for labor. Continuous increase in repo rate increase the cost of borrowings and decrease the money supply. It results to high loans repayments, which leave people indebted with less income to demand goods and services. The increase in repo rate increase financial capital repayments by businesses, which increase the cost of doing the business and cause the cost push inflation. Another data response on what we call on the balance of payments. So in this case, we are given what we call the current account. Let's see, you will be required to calculate here if there is an A given to you. So this is a part of what we call a merchandise export, net gold export, and then these are physical goods, physical exports, and then invisible exports here, and then merchandise imports, and then they are always subtracted. Then these are physical imports, and then invisible imports. Then we check, we have balance on current account being negative in the this source. The source for information is South African Reserve Bank quarterly bulletin. So let's say mention the trade, the balance of payment item that consists of physical goods. That's a trade balance. And then name any one example of services receipts, the transportation services, and then and passengers between the countries, travel services, and then construction services, financial and insurance services, business, professional and technical services, and then government services. We talk about the money spent by foreign tourists in South Africa, and then etc. We continue briefly describe the term current account. This is the BOP sub-account that captures transactions based on income, expenditure, production, receipts, and transfers. So current account is the balance of payment sub-account that captures transaction based on income, expenditure, production, services, and transfers. How can the depreciation of the local currency correct the balance of payment deficit? Remember, if the currency depreciates, it becomes weak. In that case, our goods or our exports become relatively cheap abroad. Therefore, that will lead to foreign consumers demanding more of our goods because our goods are relatively cheap. So that will be leading to exports increasing faster than imports, because as our currency depreciates, the foreign currency is appreciating, leading to imports becoming relatively expensive. So it will auto-correct the BOP deficit, because exports will be highly demanded abroad, resulting to export increasing faster than imports, and also iron out what we call the balance of payment or trade deficit. Calculate the trade balance for March 2019 in the above table. Show all calculations. It is very important for you to know the formula. Trade balance will be calculated in this fashion: merchandise export positive plus net gold export minus merchandise import. That will be giving you your trade balance. There you go. It is given, and then we have the amount of 1,175. And then let's continue. The total is 24,281. So we have our what we call merchandise export being what this amount, and then net gold export. There you go. And then we have our what we call the merchandise import being subtracted 1,222,944. So basically, our merchandise export is 1,175,547 plus 71,678 as a net gold export minus imports, because they must always be subtracted, with 1,222,944, giving us 24,281. That gives you 4 marks. You must show all calculation. Do not just summarize and give an answer, because you will be getting less marks. Then I will be skipping this one, but it is very important for you to know your methods for calculating GDP. This is what we call the production method with those sectors in the economy, and then calculated in terms of what we call, is it constant prices? It is not, or it's a current prices in there. It is given there. And then these are constant prices, which is 2015 prices. And then the source is South African Reserve Bank.
You are responsible for your own life, no matter how old you are. You are responsible for the things that are currently happening in your life right now. Nobody's going to push you to become a better student. Nobody's going to push you to read more, to study more. You are responsible to put in the time necessary so that you can get the results that you want in your life. So today, make sure that you are putting in the work. Make sure that you are responsible in doing everything that you want to do. Because for you to achieve more, you need to put a little bit extra work to what you are doing, and keep on believing and keep on doing, and you will see the success that you want.
All right, as we get back, we continue with the data response. Remember, this is what we call, this is your production method in your national account aggregate. Okay, then it's from our DBE 2018 February-March examination. Which method was used? We know that that is our production method, and then or value added or GDP method. Which year is currently used by South Africa as a base year? That is our 2015, used by South African Reserve Bank. According, briefly describe the term national gross national product, the value of all final goods and services produced by citizens of a country over a particular period of time. And then we continue. What impact does natural disasters have on agriculture? We know that if ever faced by natural disasters, there will be the climate change and global warming, resulting to crop production not being able to be very much effective, and that will always lead to agricultural produces the food security being affected negatively, and then agriculture will produce less and the industry will decline. Natural disasters negatively affect agricultural harvest since they hamper crop production and negatively impact cultivation process. Calculate the percentage contributed by the tertiary sector to the GVA or gross value added at basic price for 2016. Show all calculations. So we say tertiary sector 2016 divided by GVA or gross value added or basic price 2016 multiplied by 100, and there you go. And then we have our amount, which is 8.6% or 69% if you round off. And then here we are given DBE 2020 November examination, the focus on special economic zones. We go straight to industrial development. So the new special economic zone program originated from developments in the national economic policies and strategies, such as National Industrial Policy Framework. And then special economic zone help address challenges with the current industrial development zones, which form part of special development initiatives. The Foreign Investment Grant and Critical Infrastructure Program are same financial incentive that promote regional development, adapted from Business Report 2019. And then let's look at possible questions in there. Give one example of special development initiative in South Africa. And then let's look corridor IDZ. Which government department is responsible for industrial development in South Africa? Remember, it's Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Briefly describe the concept industrial development zone. So in that case, we talk about purposely built industrial estate that are linked to seaports and airports. And then we continue. How does the foreign investment grant help to promote regional development or industrial development? And then in this case, it is a cash incentive to assist foreign investors to cover the startup cost, which encourages establishment of businesses in different regions, e.g. cost of relocating, purchase of new machinery and equipment. The FIG, whenever the business is willing to invest in South Africa, it will be given the foreign investment grant, allowing it to be able to relocate its machines, excluding motor vehicles. So if the country, if the business relocates, it will be given the foreign investment grant. It's a part of attracting them to invest in South African economy. Why is South African, why is new special economic zone program regarded as an improvement of the current industrial development zone? We know the difference in there. The SEZ involves broader range of industrial parks and does not need to be located nearby seaports and airports, while the ITZ can only be located nearby seaports and airports. The SEZ involves production for export and domestic use, whereas ITZ only involves the exported goods to be exported into the global market. SEZ offers special tax incentive of 15%, which is not applicable on existing industrial development zones. SEZ leads to more diversified economy because we can have even small business being engaged that are willing to produce for local economy, not mainly for the global economy. Data response, we are given the change in what we call the change in GDP and economic growth for the first quarter of 2023. We can see that from top going down there, we have a positive growth. However, from this point going down, we have a negative growth. We are faced by manufacturing sector achieving more of a growth, while the agricultural sector, forest and fishing, it achieved relatively less than any other industry in the economy. The source is Stats SA. Then let's look at questions. Which year is currently used as a base year in South Africa? That is 2015, obviously. Identify the industry that recorded the highest growth in the first quarter, manufacturing industry. Briefly describe the term nominal GDP. So this refers to total value of all final goods and services produced within the country, measured at current prices. And then you can also say these are unadjusted GDP figures. And then we continue. What is the importance of economic growth? Economic growth is very important because it creates more job opportunities, and also it allows for people to get more opportunities so that they can participate in the economy. It also attracts more investors to invest in the country's economy. How can cash reserve requirements be used to stimulate economic growth? So obviously we need to apply what we call quantitative easing by ensuring that they are reduced to attract, to ensure that banks are having more money available so that they can lend out to create more money supply and more demand for goods and services. This increased money supply and trigger demand for goods and services and other economic activities. Productivity level increases. And then we are given the Phillips curve here. Remember, this is the curve that explains the relationship between inflation and the unemployment. We have our PC and PC1. So this part here is at 14% at A, we have our natural unemployment. That's where inflation, unemployment is at the highest, while inflation is 0. So also the PC can move from PC to PC1 going backward, caused by the improvement of the supply side policies. And then let's look at the questions. Mention any one factor that might shift the PC to PC1. Supply side factors such as improved human resource development and education and training. What is represented by point A on the graph? It's a natural unemployment rate, which occurs when unemployment is at the highest while inflation is 0. Briefly describe the term Phillips curve, the curve that explains the relation between inflation and the unemployment. And then we'll continue. How does high unemployment rate affect inflation rate? So if ever there's a high unemployment rate, that will lead to less inflation. High unemployment rate indicate less employment rate. This lowers the level of income and the aggregate demand, which decreases inflation to even 0. How can subsidies be used to keep inflation within the target range while decreasing the unemployment rate? The government can intervene by giving production subsidies to firms. That will lead to firms producing more goods and services at the lower cost, which will lead to even more supply and also the decline in the prices for goods and services. Production subsidies can be introduced to decrease the cost of doing the business. Low cost of doing the business increase the aggregate supply and decrease selling prices. Employment subsidies can be introduced to reduce unemployment. Another data response here on the industrial development. We are given here industrial development zones, ITZ, and special development initiatives. We are given the South African, what we call map here. I won't go into detail in there. Let's go. It is adapted from Google Images, looking at time. And then let's check the questions in there. Name the industrial development zone at A there, Saldanha Bay. And then what is the main aim of industrial development zone at B? To attract foreign investment and increase exports. To increase job opportunities. Briefly describe the term industrial development zone. Obviously, these are purposely built industrial assets that are physically linked to seaports and airports. And then we continue. How can the industrial development zone improve local socio-economic conditions? Promoting job opportunities for the unemployed people in and around IDZ. So people around those IDZ will be employed, reducing unemployment and improving standard of living. Upskilling people will create more productive workers and lead to increased productivity. Poverty alleviation will lead to better standard of living. Improved infrastructure will benefit the local community because they will also benefit from that infrastructure. The multiplier effect or development kicks in and will have a ripple effect or crowding out effect on other associated or linked industries. How can effective public-private partnership be created? Then we talk about links between public sector and private sector here. Project where the state provide infrastructure and private sector provide capital to establish joint business ventures. It brings private sector competencies, efficiencies, and capital to improve public assets or services when government lacks upfront cash. By the public sector and private sector working together, successful partnership can be created to benefit community at large. Then we are given here also the multiplier graph or multiplier diagram. That's why we are given the consumption function originally and the new one. And then our MPC is 0.5 in this case. And then our what we call autonomous spending is 20. And then our induced is 30. So we have our income on our horizontal and we have our what we call expenditure on our vertical. Remember, in this case, you can calculate the multiplier. So it is very important for you to know. Remember, if you can check your, our June examination paper 1, we had the calculation that troubled a lot of people, whereby we had to use the formula that says the change in injection, change in income over the change in injection. You must subtract here. We don't just take the number. You look at the change, then you divide to get your multiplier value, which will be 2 in this case. And then let's look, identify the original consumption function in there. There is 0 equal to 20 plus 0.5y. And then what is the value of marginal points to save on the graph? It is 0.5. And then briefly describe the term autonomous consumption. This is consumption that is independent of income. It can occur even if there is no income. And then how do investors impact the multiplier? The investors spending, the larger the multiplier, and the lower the investment, the lower is the multiplier size. Calculate the multiplier for above scenario, show all calculations. So in this case, you could use this formula or use this formula. Then both of them give you 2. You look at the change in income and the change in expenditure, or you use the formula where we are given, you have your MPC being 0.5, then you substitute to get your answer as 2. Show all calculations for that you can get enough marks. This is the paragraph question where you had to calculate the change in aggregate income, national income, if there's an injection of 20 billion. So in this case, we are given the scenario. 20 billion was an injection in the economy with the marginal propensity to consume or to save being 0.3, meaning MPC is 0.8. And then show how the multiplier effect could influence the government to create more jobs. Show all calculations. The first thing that we had to do was to calculate the value of your multiplier, because you have to calculate the multiplier effect or the change in aggregate national income. So multiplier in this case was 3.33, and then at the same time injection was 20. So for you to calculate the multiplier effect, you say injection multiplied by the value of the multiplier, or multiplier value multiplied by injection, which give you 66 billion or 66.6, which is 67. That gives you 4 marks. Then explanation. Jobs created, they will result to more income and spending in the economy, which will lead to even more jobs being created. Knock-off effect or crowding out effect or spillover effect. Government can also decrease taxation, putting more money in the pockets of the consumer. The extra money will be spent by the consumer, leading to increased employment. And then the government can decrease company tax that might lead to increased investment by businesses focusing on labor-intensive production methods. Explanation was for 4 marks. Calculation was also for 4 marks. And then we continue distinguish between nominal GDP and real GDP. It is very important for you to be very precise here so that you can get your 8 marks, because it's 8 marks. Remember, nominal GDP refer to the market value of all final goods and services produced within the country, measured at current prices. And then real GDP is the nominal GDP adjusted for the change in the price level using the base year or constant prices. And then real GDP is adjust the level of output for any price changes that may have occurred over time. An increase in nominal GDP indicate that prices have increased, while an increase in real GDP indicate that there have been increase in the real output in the economy. So it is very important for you to know that real GDP indicate that there's been increase in real output, while nominal GDP indicate there's been increase in prices, not actually the GDP or the production of goods and services. Increase in real GDP indicate that the person now has more goods and services available, a result generally believed to lead to higher living standards. Why is necessary to examine the country's balance of payments? Balance of payment provide detailed information about supply and demand of the country's currency. Balance of payment data can be used to evaluate the performance of countries' international economic competition. For example, if a country is experiencing perennial balance of payment deficits, it may signal that the country's industries lack competitiveness abroad or in the foreign markets. BOP is significant because it indicates the country's international payment gap that must be financed by governments or official reserve transactions to ensure maximum foreign exchange control. How can the government use incentive to encourage industrial development? And then a developing program that will ensure that proper skills are given to the labor force and cover certain minimum of companies' trading cost. Providing the support programs to help improve the delivery of small business support to small business and entrepreneurs, availing the grants to small and emerging businesses, providing tax-free grants for investment in industries, providing the foreign investment in incentives, e.g. strategic investment program. Here you are given the graph. You briefly discuss appreciation of the rand using the change in demand. So here you are supposed to draw the graph. You explain the appreciation. It is very important for you to know the following. For the rand to appreciate, there must be excess supply for the rand. So it can happen in two ways. There can be a shift of the supply curve, indicating that the supply for the rand is increasing, or the backward shift of the demand curve, indicating that the demand for rand is decreasing while the supply remains high. For instance, in this case, we have the backward shift of the demand for rand, meaning foreign countries are demanding less of South African rand. As they demand less of South African rand, that is leading to the fact that the supply remains more. So this is excess supply for South African rand. So it will be leading to the appreciation. So this graph was used on the change in demand as for the instruction. Appreciation is the increase in the value of a country's currency in relation to another country's currency. That is 2 marks. Appreciation is caused by the excess supply of South African rand. So if our rand is oversupplied, and then that will lead to appreciation, because there will be more outflow of our, there will be more supply of our rand, as then there is a less demand for the rand. The decrease in demand for South African rand from D to D1, it decreases the amount of rand payable for dollars. So we're paying 17 rand, now we're paying 12 rand to afford the dollar. Appreciation occurs because of market forces, demand and supply. Then we approach section C at this time. Remember, these are our essays. However, it is not guaranteed that the essays in here are the ones to appear in your paper tomorrow. We are just citing some examples for you to know the structure of an essay. But I will try to work around all essays that are here for you to understand them better than before. So how should you approach section C? Do not write an essay that has not been asked in the examination. Please, it is very important that you only answer the question or the essay that is in there. Do not bring your own essay, because that will be leading you getting 0. It is very important. You can't get 0 in section C because you must be able to list number 1. If you can list, that gives you an opportunity to get at least about 8 marks for lower order, or you are able to provide examples. At the same time, those listings or subheadings, you can be able to define them or give some description, which will be giving you the 2 marks for each description. So you can't get 0 if you are really well prepared. So ensure that you avoid writing an essay that has not been questioned in the examination. Be able to list subheadings for each essay. We have more than, for this paper, I listed about how many essays? I listed about 14 essays. It is very important for you to be able to list each subheading for each essay so that you avoid getting. So remember, you also have an additional part that is something also that is away from 26 marks. You can be able also to explain in there critically. Have a brief description of each subheading for you to get that 2 marks, and give examples where possible. Discuss relevant content for each subheading, and then do not list points in additional part. Write in full sentences. Do not write an essay in paragraph form. Use point form but full sentences. Remember that the main part of an essay is separated into 2 parts, which is 8:18 principle. 8 marks is mainly for lower order, where you listen, give examples. 18 marks is for content delivery. So this is the structure where you introduce. Remember, in the introduction, you define the concept that is relevant in there. You don't provide examples. You get the maximum of 2 marks in there. And then we'll continue with the structure of an essay. This is the body of an essay where we have the main part. And the main part is 26 marks that I've just explained, where you discuss the content of the essay. Also, it is separated into 2 parts, remember, whereby you have 8:18 principle. Going down to additional part, that's where now you have a separate question that is linked to the main part, where you have to answer critically. We continue. Conclusion. This should be the higher order response. The maximum of 2 marks should be achieved by you in there. Ensure that you don't repeat the content that has been mentioned in the body of an essay. You answer critically. You become more authentic of the topic and additional part. The main part and additional part. Then you will be getting your maximum of 2 marks, which will be giving you 40 marks. These are essays for question 5. Discussing detailed market within the 4-sector model in the economy. Remember, in this case, we talk about the factor market, product market, financial market, and the foreign exchange market. It is very important for you to be able to write this essay. As you write the essay, you know factor market is the market where factors of production are traded. And then it is a very important market in the economy, because without the factor market, there will be no factors of production, and there will be no production for goods and services. This market is also known as the input or resource market. So under factor market, we come across other markets in there, such as labor market, where the labor is traded, and also land market, where the land can be traded. In there, we have some remunerations, where we come across wages and salaries for what we call for labor. We have profits for entrepreneurs, rent for what we call for land, as well as interest for the capital. And then you go to another market, you go to maybe a product market. That's a market where goods and services are traded, or they are sold or purchased. So it is a very important market, because it acts as a mediator between consumers and producers. The market offers a consumer good that can be separated to what we call the durable consumer goods, semi-durable and non-durable, including services. In this kind of the market, we also have consumer goods market, which offers consumer goods, capital goods market, which offers capital goods such as machinery and equipment, and then we also have services market. Remember, under consumer goods market and capital goods market, we also come across intermediate goods. And then you go straight to other market, which is the financial market, being divided into 2. That's a market where financial securities are traded. And then it divided into money market and capital market. And capital market. The money market, the market for short-term loans and deposits by the private sector. The money market is controlled by South African Reserve Bank. It contains treasury bills, dividends, also loans and borrowings. And then also we go down to the capital market, where we say is the market for long-term loans and deposits by the private sector. It is controlled by JSE, Johannesburg Security Exchange. In that kind of the market, you come across mortgage bond, insurance companies, etc. We jump straight to the what we call the foreign exchange market, which is the market where different world currencies are exchanged. In that kind of the market, our South African rand is traded freely, and the biggest foreign exchange markets in the world are in Tokyo, London, etc. So this market is very important, because it allows for the foreign trade to occur. It also allows for international tourism. It allows local consumers to be able to access foreign currencies for them to pay for imports, and also foreign consumers to access our currency so that they can be paying for our goods and services. Discussing in detail the new economic paradigm, or smoothing the business cycle. Remember, the new economic paradigm is the new economic perspective that aims at eliminating uncertainties on the use of fiscal and monetary policy. It is embedded on both demand side and supply side. So as we talk about this, we have the demand side, where you talk about fiscal policy, monetary policy, and then we also have unemployment as well as inflation. Under the supply side, we talk about cost of doing the business. We talk about efficiency of inputs and efficiency of markets. There's a long list of information to be provided in there. You just have to be precise. Discussing detailed features underpinning forecasting. In this case, we talk about those 4 indicators. I normally say you will be dealing with, in this case, LLCC, leading indicators, leading indicators, coincident and composite indicators, and then we have other features underpinning forecasting, which include we have extrapolation, we have moving averages, we have trend line, we have length, and then we have moving averages. So it is very important for you to know the listing and be able to discuss them all. It's as simple as say, if it can come into the examination, you will master it. Discussing detailed main objective for the public sector. In this case, you need to be able to list those 5 objectives, and then you discuss them in detail. They include economic growth, full employment, they include price stability, they include economic equity, they include exchange rate stability. Be able to discuss them thoroughly so that you can get those marks. Discussing detailed reasons for public sector failure, link them to typical problem explained through public sector provisioning. Remember, in that case, we normally say manage South African police services before liability. In that case, we have management failure, we have structural weaknesses, we have apathy, we have politicians, we have special interest groups, bureaucracy, and lack of motivation. Be able to list them and be able to understand each of these and then be able to discuss them thoroughly. This is not a difficult, essay. Be able to link this one to what we call reasons for poor public sector provisioning. And then discussing detailed reasons for foreign trade. Also, as you check or mind the gap, we have demand side and supply side. There's a structure in there which says, firstly, demand side, it says people in Witbank prefer coffee, meaning the population size. We know that the increase in population size results to the greater demand for goods and services. And then as the demand for goods and services increases, local firms might be facing supply constraint to supply effectively. Therefore, consumers will be demanding imports from foreign countries. And then income, as we say, people in Witbank prefer coffee. We know that as the level of income per capita increases, that will lead to the increase in disposable income. As disposable income increases, there will be a greater demand for goods and services, for which some of those goods are produced abroad. And then the wealth. We know that mostly wealthy people decide to demand what we call, they demand luxury goods that might be produced abroad, while people that are not wealthy, they normally demand basic goods and services, for which some of them are also imported or produced abroad. And then preference and taste. In this case, we know that people differ in terms of taste and preferences. So because of that, people end up importing goods that they prefer from other world countries because they are not available in the local market. And then consumption patterns. Consumption pattern differs from a country to country. Developed countries normally demand luxury goods that might be produced from other countries, while developing countries can demand necessities that are produced in the local or also produced by foreign countries. And then on the supply side, we talk about what we call, we say rich countries like to send chocolate. In this case, we say natural resources are unevenly distributed across the world. We know that some countries are favored in terms of some natural resources, while other countries are disadvantaged. So those countries that are favored will always have to extract more of resources or the surplus and supply other countries that are having less of such. And then labor expert, the C stands for the climate condition. We know that climate conditions differ from a country to country. Some countries are favored to produce a particular crop, while some are not favored. For that sake, those that are favored will be producing surplus production of the crop and supply the rest of the world. And then labor expertise. We clearly know that some of the countries, especially developed countries, are having well-trained labor and skilled labor that is producing more goods and services, and this labor is well compensated. So in this case, they can produce surplus production at the lower cost, which is the mass production, and they produce at the economies of scale. They end up supplying the entire global market because they have a surplus production. And then we have technology or technical development. Level of technology differs from a country to country. Developed countries are favored in terms of technology, so they always produce high level of productivity and supply the entire world. And then we have specialization. We know that if ever a country is specializing, it chooses to produce the product where it is having a competitive advantage. So it will always produce more of that particular product because it produces more at the lower cost and supply the entire world market. And then we have capital. We know that developed countries are always favored in terms of capital. So they have an advantage over developing countries because they can produce more goods and services and supply the entire world and benefit there because of availability of the capital. And then economic pursuits. We talk about discussing detailed export promotion. It is very important for you to know that if it says in detail without noting to you, you will have approaches of export promotion, and then we will be having advantages as well as disadvantages. Let's go in a little bit. If we talk about approaches or methods, we refer to this. We have production or export subsidies. Remember, they can be divided into two: direct subsidies or indirect subsidies. The direct subsidies can be a cash or grant given by the government to local business that are producing to export into the foreign or global market. And then, if subsidy is given in a form of cash, it will be reducing the cost of production by those businesses that are promoted to export goods into the global market. And then, indirect subsidies include that support that is given by the government that does not directly include money. However, there can be money involved. Let's look at this one. We talk about tax benefits. So we will be talking about, in this case, tax rebates or refund on import tariffs. Whenever local firms are producing goods to export, they export and pay import tariffs. Then at a later stage, the government will be refunding them their tax. Their tax that they've paid. We talk about the government surety or export credit. Remember, the government surety is all about having the local business, getting a right to access the credit from financial institution at the lower interest rate at the expense of the government. That is also known as export credit. And then we talk about also tax exemptions. That's when local exporting businesses are excluded from paying a certain percentage of tax. For instance, a business should be paying 28% of tax, but the government says they must only pay 18%. So they are exempted from paying that other 10%. They will be taking that money and finance their production so that they can produce more goods and services. Those are indirect subsidies. Then we also have incentives, which include the likes of low-cost storage. As our goods will be stored, as they reach the foreign market, they should be stored. So the government negotiate cheap storages for our local exporting businesses. Low transport cost or cheap freight that also benefit our local businesses because they will be able to transport their goods at the lower cost at the expense of the government. And then we talk about also free advisory scheme that will be given to local exporting businesses so that they can be able to produce efficiently. And then we talk about the business intelligence that can be given to entrepreneurs to be even more efficient. Market research development. The government can do a research on the foreign markets on behalf of our local firms and give them information about their target market, their consumers, and their competitors, so that when they reach the foreign market, they are able to function easily without some challenges. And then advertising. The government ensures that local firms are getting good publicity abroad by doing advertising on their behalf, so that they will be able to get into the market and deliver and supply their goods and services. What can be advantages? If we are being supported through export promotion, local firms will be able to do what? They will be able to produce goods at the larger scale. There will be high demand for labor. So as the demand for labor increases, that will be reducing unemployment. There will be increased GDP economic growth as well as there will be increasing GDP productivity as well as economic growth of the country because of the increased productive capacity. We will be able to earn more foreign currency as for export earnings as a country. It will also allow South Africa to reduce the trade deficit or BOP deficit, and then also the foreign earnings that we receive as a country from exports will be able to boost our economy. And then what is bad about the export promotion? It leads to distorted prices, meaning the selling price for the goods and services abroad will not be reflecting the actual cost of the production because of the government support by the government in terms of subsidies and incentives will not be reflected truly in the selling price by businesses, meaning it leads to distorted prices. Also, in this case, we will be having a situation of unfair competition being created by our local businesses abroad. How? Remember, our goods are well subsidized as they go to the foreign market. Their goods abroad, they are not well subsidized. So our goods will be relatively cheap in the foreign market, pushing out those foreign businesses out of the market, which lead to the unfair competition. Also, we talk about our goods might be seen as the product of dumping because they will be sold at the lowest possible cost. So if our goods are seen as dumping, then that will lead to foreign countries retaliating by imposing more tariffs on our exports in the global market. I can't complete it. However, remember also that as we are supported through export promotion, this will lead to the fact that if the government can withdraw its support from our local business that are being supported, they cannot afford to stand in the open market, leading to them going out of the foreign markets. Discussing detailed arguments in favor of protectionism. It's a list of about 9. It is very important for you to be able to list each argument in favor of protectionism and also be able to explain so that you can accumulate marks. And then discussing detailed demand-side approach to promoting growth and development. Remember, it's a repeat again from the new economic paradigm. That's when now you do what? You talk about the fiscal policy, the monetary policy, and then you talk about progressive income tax, income tax system whereby high income earners are being taxed more and low income earners are being taxed less, that benefit the poor in the economy. You talk about the capital gains tax. You talk about the subsidies given by the government, such as property subsidies. You talk about other redistribution that include the land policy, such as land restitution and land redistribution, etc. Discussing detailed South African growth and development policies. In this case, you discuss those that include RDP. It is very important for you to know the following. You must know the objectives for each policy and then be able to evaluate the success and the failure looking at the objective, if they've been achieved or not in South Africa. Here you talk about the likes of ASGISA, you talk about GIA, you talk about EPWP, NDP, NGP, NSDS, and then we talk about also the likes of BBBE and BE. But the examiner chooses what you should discuss. But then if it's open, they can simply say, discuss in detail growth and development policies. That will be in your favor. Discussing South African initiatives to, South African endeavors to regional development. You talk about industrial development zones. In that case, you must be able to define industrial development zone like you've been defining in the board of the, of this lesson, and also be able to list ITZs currently in place in South Africa, 5 of them, and also be able to discuss characteristics that are sourced from the definition, and also be able to discuss objectives of ITZ. Then that will allow you to get marks. And then SEZ, it's also important for you to be able to define it as it's been defined in the board of the this lesson. Also be able to list some SEZ that are currently in place in South Africa. Give some characteristics of SEZ. Remember, SEZ can be found anywhere across the country, while ITZ can only be located nearby seaports and airports. And remember, SEZ are having a wide range of incentives that can benefit businesses located in there, while ITZ are having limited incentive that can benefit mainly exporting businesses. ITZ focus mainly on exporters, while SEZ accommodate both locally producers that are producing for local market and those that are aiming at exporting goods into the global market. SDI. Also, it is very important for you to define SDI as the interdepartmental strategy aiming at doing what? At improving economic livelihood of underdeveloped areas where there's a high level of unemployment and poverty. It is very important for you to list SDIs currently in place in South Africa, and also mention objectives of SDIs or functions of SDIs, which will be including improving infrastructure, forming PPP or public-private partnerships, etc., also attracting exports, etc. And then you must be able also to check if they've been successful or not in South African economy. Corridors. You define corridors as the track of land that form the passageway that allow access from one point to another. You give 2 types of corridors that are corridors within and beyond borders of the country, and then you explain the importance of corridors that as they allow goods to move from one point to another. Example of corridors also Maputo Development Corridor, etc. Then you can look at your additional part. Economic indicators. There is nothing new here. It's a repeat or duplication. We have covered this content before. If you talk of economic indicators, you talk about those indicators that reflect or those variables that reflect welfare of the economy. They include the likes of we talk about money supply indicators, inflation indicators, productivity indicators, unemployment indicators, and then interest rates indicators. And then etc. It is very important for you to know each part of each indicator is having its own sub indicators. Be able to explain. It's not a difficult essay for you if you want to answer question number 6. Same thing apply with the social indicators. It is very important for you to know them all, which is demographics with its own indicators, 2 of them. Population growth rate, as well as we have also life expectancy. You talk about health indicators, education indicators. We also have what we call it, housing and urbanization, etc. So it is very important for you to know these indicators and sub-indicators for you, so that you can be able to get marks. They are very easy. You can't struggle if ever one of them come into the examination. So this is an example of an essay. I won't dwell that much. The essay talks about reasons for public sector failure, which has been discussed slightly here by me. So you define here public sector failure, which occurs when the government fails to manage the economy and the resources under its control optimally. And then management failure, we discussed. Remember, it is very important for you to know that management fails because of it lacks leadership training and experience. That is very important. So they become more incompetent, these officials, so that to provide public goods and services. And then corruption, nepotism, and fraud lead to the management failing to provide effectively, because sometimes they employ their friends and their families. And then also, because there is no transparency, they end up using public funds to benefit themselves. And also there is lack of accountability. They do whatever they want with public funds. Continues, they are very much ignorant, and they apply even conflicting policies because they are not well informed about their job that they are doing. So they save their personal agendas also. We talk about bureaucracy. This one occurs when public servants mainly focus on following rules and regulations beyond control instead of offering services that are required. They do that so that they cannot deliver whatever is supposed to be delivered. And then there's a long information we'll discover here on the presentation. And then we continue upward. This talks to ignorance, whereby public officials are not committed to get their jobs done. They might be demotivated, we don't know, but they don't care because they know that they will never be held accountable. Remember, accountability process takes time in the public sector because there are so long processes to be followed. And then lack of motivation, that this happens when public servants are not well motivated for the great job they are doing. However, the government focus on their wrongdoing so that they can be charged and be held accountable. This results to them not delivering services effectively and be involved in corrupt activities and fraudulent activities. Special interest groups, these are very much powerful groups in the society that will always manipulate the government to deliver or to issue financial resources on their favor. Whenever they react, the government will always make decisions to favor these organizations or these groups. They are very much powerful. They include what you call a Chamber of Commerce, tax councils, also the Council for the Agricultural or Farmers Agriculture. Whenever they react, the government will always try to favor them, because if ever they decide not to get the job done, there might be some problems in the economy. So they do what we call a rent seeking, so they benefit at the expense of social members, leading to inefficient provision of public goods and services. And then structural weaknesses. This talks to the fact that when public officials are having different agendas in the same office, they end up having conflicting ideas, applying conflicting policies that will lead to inefficient provision of resources. Politicians, we know politicians will always ensure that during the time of elections, they increase government spending to benefit themselves, so that they can be voted for. After that, they disappear. They come again when they have to be voted for. That is regarded as a part of the reason for public sector failure, because they become inconsistent. They come only if they have to benefit. That is also known as what we call the rent seeking, because they want to benefit at the expense of people. Then they disappear. They come back again to seek for the support when elections are very, very close. And then they continue here, the politicians. And then additional part, the government can assess community needs to avoid wasteful spending, meaning how can the government improve service delivery in your area? Monitoring the team from the governance must be sent to communities to ensure quality service delivery. So if ever there's a project going on, that must be evaluated. And then government must fight corruption to ensure within municipalities, to ensure efficient use of resources. Municipal officials must be held accountable for their doings in the office, and then municipal budget must be transparent to communities. And then this is the conclusion that must be at the higher order. Any conclusion can be accepted. And then these are indicators that have been explained, so I will simply browse on them because of time. Discussing detailed economic indicators related to inflation, foreign trade, unemployment, as well as productivity. And then let's look at it. Introduction, we discuss or we define economic indicators or indicators. So that gives you 2 marks. And then we go further, inflation indicators. We define inflation as significant increase in general price level. And then increase in inflation is an effect of decrease in buying power parity or purchasing power parity in the economy, resulting to people being affording less goods and services, and their living standard will be undermined. And also, it is controlled by South African Reserve Bank with inflation target ranging between 3 to 6%, and then measured through CPI and PPI. And then we continue. We have CPI, which is CPI is the basket for average South Africans, and then PPI measure the cost of production by local businesses. And then we continue. For trade indicators, we have 2 indicators. The exchange rate. Remember, exchange rate is the currency of one country in relation to another country's currency. If the currency appreciates, it can lead to BOP problem because our export will appear more expensive and imports will be cheap. So exports will decrease and imports will be increasing, resulting to a trade deficit in the BOP. And then if the currency depreciates, vice versa occurs. Terms of trade, the index of export to the index of imports. We know that terms of trade will always be affected by the appreciation or depreciation of the currency. As the currency appreciates, terms of trade will be increasing in the short run. As it depreciates, terms of trade might be increasing, depending on the elasticity of demand for our goods and services that are exported. If terms of trade are increasing, that gives us more gain as South Africa because there will be more foreign earnings on exported goods and services. Employment indicators. In this case, we focus on EAP, economically active population, as one of the indicators, which are people aged between 15 to 64 or 16 to 65 in the economy. And then if we talk about unemployment, we refer to people that are economically active, that have been looking for jobs, but they cannot find one. They are unemployed. Another indicator is employment rate, which indicate people that have been looking for a job and are employed. Those people are economically active. How do you calculate? We calculate employment rate through employment rate equals to number of people employed divided by what we call economically active population. Same thing apply with unemployment. Number of people unemployed divided by what we call the economically active population. Productivity indicators. We have labor productivity, and then in this case, productivity is the difference between the input and the output. So indicators in there include labor productivity and remuneration per worker. You must focus on that. We know that if ever remuneration per worker increase faster than the labor productivity, that will lead to inflation. But if labor productivity increase more than remuneration per worker, that will lead to less inflation. Calculating remuneration per worker, we say remuneration per worker equals to real GDP divided by number of workers employed. And then we continue as we are approaching the end of this essay, additional part. So it is necessary because indicators are used by government and economists to discover trends of economic performance and social variables. Economic indicators are used by economists as barometers to determine whether economic growth and development has increased or decreased. The change in economic indicator has a huge impact on government decision making when planning the main budget. Economic indicators also have an influence on how the state implement economic policies. Knowing the performance of economic indicators might increase investors' confidence and result to an increase in the capital stock of the country. Economic indicators are published to inter-organization platforms. A country can easily get assistance to improve performance of certain economic variables. So those organizations include the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, as well as United Nations. Changes in economic variables informs government decision-making based on annual budget system, which is allocated based on economic behavior. That was your conclusion. And then, in that case, our lesson ends here, our essay ends here. I'm hoping the lesson had a greater impact as we prepare for tomorrow. Also, be careful. I did all of these essays because I don't want you to think essays that were written here are the one that will appear. I had to price in every essay that we have in both macroeconomics as well as economic pursuit. I wish you all the best, and I believe you will be able to access the question paper. The question paper will never be that easy. This is a preparatory examination. It checks your readiness for final exam, so better be prepared and go there being ready, and then for any question, apply yourself. Ensure that you dominate the question paper. I, Mr. Mhlongo, wish you all the best, and I believe we'll meet again as we'll be preparing for paper 2. Ta-da. As well.